what you wanted, but it really taught me a lot of how to listen. And little did I know it was going to be the basis two of my careers. Well, in 56, I also went ahead and got a ham radio license. One of my high school chums had gotten a license and went over to Walter Ash. We got a Harvey Wells TBS 50D, SX99, and an RME 152 converter. At that time, the bands were open all the time. When I tell people this, they kind of like, yeah, right. Well, it was true. The biggest sunspot cycle. So 6 meters was amazing. It was like 75 meters. I also got into building. You'll see that little box on the left with that meter. I wish I had a better picture of it. I wish I had it. Didn't keep it, but I started building things, but the heart of it was the Harvey Wells. Played a very important part, as we'll talk later. I still have it. I don't know that you can. No, I didn't have the other camera. I still have it. Every morning, I'm on 3885 on AM, of course, with that Harvey Wells. But one day I'm listening around on 6 meters, and I'm going, "What is going on here?" Boy, the most ridiculous signal I'd ever heard. So much distortion. And I'll go, what is this? Come back the next night. The guy's still there around the same frequency. So I got up the nerve to call him. I've only been on the air a couple of weeks. And I hit the button called BFO because I didn't know much about all this stuff. But when I did, his voice jumped out of the speaker. And that was that single sideband stuff I'd been hearing about. Aha. What, on 6 meters in 1956? Unheard of. Well, it was, and the guy was K0DGE. And every night I would meet with him because he couldn't get anybody to really talk to him, and he was trying to make adjustments to this transmitter. Found out later he was one of the very first few on single sideband on VHF. But I'd been playing the Fox, and I'd go into St. Louis at least 3 to 4 times a week and play. I'd play for 8 minutes, and then they'd have 3 hours of movie. So I said, why don't you come and visit me? So I rolled up in front of his address, and what was it? It was KMOX Radio. Larry Burroughs was the chief engineer at KMOX, and he took me under his wing. It was just so cool, and what a blessing. But I said, Larry, would you build me one of those sideband transmitters? That sounds really cool. Nope, can't do it. But I'm going to teach you how. And he did. So a very few short weeks into ham radio, I was a building fool. We bought a Central Electronics 10B, had plug-in coils, and I built it from a kit. And Larry checked it all through, and I got 100 on it because it worked right out of the bat. I like that. So we're sitting on 14 megacycles. How do we get to 6 meters? He taught me how to use a grid dip meter. I bought that from Walter Ash. And we started winding coils, 6 meter coils. Well, that doesn't quite get us to 6 meters. Went back to Walter Ash, bought a blank chassis, and Larry taught me how to build a 6U8 dual triode 36 megacycle oscillator. Wow, we were on 6 meters. And I never realized what was happening. The station grew very quickly. When the NC300 came out, I had to have the Dream receiver. I built a Heathkit Seneca. All of this was going on. But I know we needed big antennas. And so my loving parents allowed me to put up a 110-foot Roan. I had a 36-foot long Telerex and a pair of J-beams for 2 meters. Well, that beam was very special. It's hard to see in that picture, but it was one of their spiral arrays. It wasn't all horizontal and it wasn't all vertical. And the theory was that our signals do not stay in the same plane that they leave your transmitter. Your antenna might be horizontal, but it might rotate 3 or 4 times before it gets to the receiving antenna, all because of phasing. And a lot of times you think, oh boy, he dropped his power. No, because sometimes it's like 20 dB difference from horizontal to vertical. And it really worked very, very much so. Well, I bought a Johnson 6 and 2 Thunderbolt, put that together. So now I've got over a kilowatt on 6 and 2 meters. And I was making contacts left and right and having more fun than I was supposed to. Well, I got a call from Bob Drake of the Drake Company. And he said, "Are you the guy that's got that kilowatt single sideband on 6 meters?" And I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "We would like for you to come to one of our club meetings. We hold an annual meeting and it's very technical. And we would like for you to come and tell us how you did that." Well, I wanted Larry to go, but he couldn't, but he helped me make a lot of the drawings and so on. And so off we went to the Biltmore Hotel. And where was the Biltmore Hotel? The Biltmore was in downtown Dayton, Ohio. And what was so unique about this is that they had taken all of the furniture out of one of the floors. They had the Collins room, the Hallicrafter room, the Drake room, Central Electronics, Telerex, Mosley, but they were all there. And as a young kid, I'd been reading about them in the magazines, but man, they were like celebrities to me. And so we really had an incredible beginning in all of ham radio. What was this? Of course, it was the Dayton Hamvention. It was the beginning of it. In 64, they moved out to Hara Arena. But it, it was just a wonderful thing for this young kid, I have to tell you. And Dayton, Ohio it was the real mecca and still is. Well, while I was there, a guy came to me. He was from the UK. And he said, "I would like to invite you to do a test with us. We make antennas. Would you like to do that? Could you put it up?" No problem. He sent over one of his 128 element 2 meter arrays. It was a whole batch of J beams. Well, I was very fortunate. Down the pike, about 8 miles from Marissa, Illinois, my home, was a Motorola dealer, K9 SGD. And there was a contractor. He had cranes and lifts and all that. He helped me when we put up the 110-foot Roan and all that. But they figured out what we had to do here. A lot of phasing harnesses, things I'd never heard of. We had two prop pitch motors in it. It was wonderful, and we made a lot of inroads with that in VHF. Well, I grew the station quickly. You'll notice down at the bottom an SB62. That was the first band switching transverter that I had built. And of course, with the 6 and 2 Thunderbolt, I was doing extremely well, having a lot of fun. Well, CQ Magazine hired me because VHF sideband was really something not very ordinary at the time. And so they hired me to become the editor of VHF single sideband column. And it was really the place for serious VHFers. It's where we exchanged ideas and experimenting and so on. And I had all kinds of diagrams and pictures guys would send me. I also wrote for another magazine at the time, VHF Amateur. The front cover of that particular one I had built for the magazine, for the article. I had built a 6 meter transverter and told how to do it. And it really wasn't much. It was 3 tubes, 6360 in the final, dozen resistors and few capacitors, and got out that grid dip meter, and it was super. So those things really led my whole entrance to ham radio. But while that was all going on, I got a job at the Holiday Inn in St. Louis. It was the largest Holiday Inn in the chain. And it was 600 rooms on one floor. And it had a four-star restaurant, a German restaurant. And I got a job there. I was there for a long, long time, many years. But I built a pipe organ in the restaurant. All the pipes were behind glass. All of the instruments you see on that piano, they were all activated with pinball machine solenoids. See, the theater organ, the big Wurlitzers, that was all in those, a piano, all the drums, the cymbals, and so on. But they were air driven. Well, I did this using pinball machines. But people would come from all over, busloads. Organ clubs would come and visit with us. But after 12 years of playing all that time, I thought I'm going to change my direction a little. My hometown of Marissa, Illinois, my dad and mom owned a clothing store. That's him in the in the white shirt standing near that Ford car down there. That was their bob shop, they called it, men's clothes and shoes. Well, I started this music shop, and I had no idea what was about to happen. I got a franchise for Hammond organ. That was my focus. And was selling lots of them because in those days, a lot of people would have a Hammond organ just in their living room and learn to play it, so on. I was giving lessons and all that, but I also I was cutting them in half, making them a lot lighter because the wood was, they were made beautiful cabinets. Well, the bands didn't care about that, so I started working with some of the bands and cutting down the B3s. But and these kids started finding out there was a guy with a soldering iron in Marissa. And working with the bands, I discovered they needed a real sound system because I'd rent Hammond organs to the Kiel Auditorium and some of the places that had some of the concerts come in the early days. And the PAs are terrible, little columns about 4 foot tall. Well, that's not going to happen for me. And I was very fortunate at, again, the right time, right place. The Fox were throwing out their big PA, that those big Olson bins you see the guys standing on top of. Those were 16-foot folded horns put in 1932. Well, they were replacing them with new. Well, I built a PA around that. I didn't know really. I was just building a big hi-fi system, but I would start taking it to some of the arenas around that would have people, and oh boy, it caught on big time. Once a month, a cavalcade of stars would come through St. Louis from Nashville. They'd have a bus load of some of their stars, Dolly Parton, Buck Owens, Porter Wagner, Jerry Lee. And it really was growing quite quickly. And I was I was in a very strange world because I hardly knew any kind of music other than theater organ. Well, one day I got a call from the Fox again. George Bales, the stage manager, said, "You still have those big PAs? Yeah, those big boxes?" I said, "Yeah." "Do they work?" I said, "Yeah, I got them going." He said, "Well, you got to help me. This band came in here at noon. They're going to play tonight, or we think they are. But all of their equipment, the sound equipment, it got confiscated by the DEA and the FBI last night in New Orleans." He said, "I need for you to talk to this guy." Well, it happened to be that this guy was Jerry Garcia. And I started telling Jerry about what was going on with the PA that I had, because I didn't realize that I was the only guy doing this kind of thing at the time. Uh, Again, it was all about ham radio. And Jerry got on the phone, and he couldn't believe that I had Macintosh amps and JBL speakers and clips bottoms and all this kind of stuff that wasn't heard of. But here I was, a ham, doing a lot of big things. I didn't know that at the time. This story is, maybe if you're a rock and roll historian, you know where I'm going with this story. The Grateful Dead sound man owned all the equipment. and he ran it for them, the sound system. But he was on probation out of the state of California because he was one of the innovators of LSD. And he wasn't supposed to be out of the state of California. DEA and the FBI knew about it, got wind of the little tour they were going to try to do. So they go to the warehouse in New Orleans after the show was over. The band comes on to St. Louis. Well, hey, there's no cell phone. Nope. So they came on to St. Louis. Owsley got all the gear loaded and they padlocked him in the truck and off they went to California. Well, the band got there at noon in St. Louis, and where is he? They found out after calling. Oh my goodness, what are we going to do now? So we saved the day, and it was quite an event in all of rock history. We took the gear up, and they were really thrilled because they hadn't played through anything like that. I didn't know that. I was just a ham having fun, and there was a guy there. He had to be a journalist. He wrote an article called "The Night Rock and Roll Sound Was Born." You can look it up in Google, and they will give you the whole story. And that story ended up in Billboard magazine. And then the whole world was calling me. Oh, goodness, Jeff Beck and Humble Pie, and Joan Baez, Les Paul, so on and so on. But being a straight man in a crazy world, you're looking at a guy that has never to this day smoked anything. I've never tasted beer. For gosh sakes, no drugs or anything. But I, I, I just, I didn't care for it. I was trying to respect my parents all my growing up, but they respected me because I was the guy that could make them sound better, and I had a soldering iron so I could fix their gear if we needed. So it all worked out because we became friends. All the groups I worked with, we became very good friends with them. But then I started looking at the industry, and it was crazy because what would happen, one of the band would have a Volkswagen van and he'd throw some of the guitar amps in there. Another guy'd have a pickup truck and he'd throw the lighting system. They usually didn't get to the venue at the same time. Some didn't make it at all. Jobs were canceled. I said, no, I'm not going to do this. So I acquired an old Greyhound bus and we put 11 beds in it so we could sleep the roadies on the way to the next gig. I also leased a 40-foot semi. That was the first semi to do any kind of touring. And one of the groups that I did, they were a young group. This was their first tour, which I did, and this was their first job. No one ever guesses who they are, but that's ZZ Top without beards. Oh, they grew to have them, and we're still very good friends. As all of the artists I worked with, if I couldn't be a friend, I didn't work with them. But I get another phone call. A lot of people reading at Billboard. He said, "You got that big PA, right?" And I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "We need you in Boston tomorrow." Can't happen. Why? I said, "Because I'm out with Chaka Khan. We're on contract and we're in the middle of a tour. Well, find somebody to take it. I need you desperately. You got to be here." And he started pushing. Well, now, wait a minute. Who are you? Who are we? We're the Who. I'm going, oh boy. So we talked about it a little, and I knew a friend in Chicago that had a PA that could handle her. And I said, "How are we going to get there? I can't drive the semi. My guys, we can get there fast enough." He said, "You go out to the airport and you rent a Tiger Freight. They've got 747s. You can drive up in the middle of them." Really? Okay. And that's exactly what happened. And the next night, of course, and it was another historic night in all of rock and roll because the Who hadn't been here in 4 years. And in those 4 years, the sound systems came way up. I wonder what's the cause of some of that. But we were having fun. Well, We did that for 2 years. It was a wonderful, wonderful tour. And Pete called me one day and he said, "Hey, come over here. I want to talk to you. We got a couple years off." I said, "Yeah, what's going on?" So I go to London, sat down in his studio, and he had a wonderful studio. Oh my goodness. It was up on the second floor of his home on the Thames. And it was just loaded with all kinds of keyboard instruments as well as Steinway pianos and organs and synthesizers, tape decks. And he said, quad sound is big right now. And I'd like for you to do something. I'd like to be able to move Roger's voice around the hall. You think you could do that? Well, no, it's not in my vocabulary, really. And so we started out doing that. But before I leave this slide, you see that chair he's leaning on? That's a little $900 Lowry home organ. And it it's very interesting because if you are a Who fan, you recognize this. That's the introduction to their hit song. That's Baba O'Reilly. It was done with that Lowry organ you see in the top picture there, coupled to a couple of synthesizers. It was fantastic. Well, I at the time, again, here we are again, the right timing. I had been pairing up with a company, IES in England. They were a sister company. I would have these big PAs over here. He built like big PAs over there. So when he'd come over here with Emerson Lake, or I'd go over there with Humble Pie or The Who, we didn't have to cart all that stuff around. It worked out great. But we had just started working on a console. No one had ever built a true rock and roll console. They were all recording consoles, and they needed more help. Well, so happened that was at the right time because we could add two more output channels, and it was the first quad mixer, which we used for Quadrophenia. The first night of Quadrophenia was another historic night. If you're any Who fans, you know where this is going. Keith Moon was crazy. He really was. Pete Townsend always said he should have been in an insane asylum, but he was one of the best drummers I'd ever stood around because I would be behind the amplifiers because if anything went wrong, I wanted to be right there because the bands usually had their own mix guy. Well, I'm about 6 feet from Moon, and I'm right behind Townsend's amp, and right in the middle of the show, he just collapses over the drums. Well, we thought he was kidding because he did a lot of crazy stuff like that. But after a few bars, no, he wasn't kidding. Whoa, what's happening here? So what we did is one of my other roadies, we jumped over and said, "Okay, here we go," and we had to carry him off the stage because he had collapsed. What had happened, Keith Moon took a tranquilizer for a 2,500-pound horse before the show. That's the kind of crazy guy he was. But there's all kinds of stories around that. But trust me, it was really something special to be with those level of groups. They gave me a gold record for that particular 2 years I was with them and so on. Then we finished 4 more years. But I did a lot of other things. We were the first guys to do monitors. Why? What was the deal? The monitors were always right close to the microphone, and so they fed back. I was the first guy to be able to put monitors next to a microphone, and they didn't feed back. Why? Ham radio, phasing. Learned about it with those 128 elements. Learned about it with all the other things we did. Phasing. Aha. Two signals together. What do you get? Well, it made a lot of sense. And phasing is something that we don't hear a lot about. And it's there, but we don't understand it. And I have a great demo for you. You'll probably never forget this part. I got a lot more demos coming for you. Here's the deal. I have two microphones here. Let me unplug this guy. We're not playing games here with guys and gals. This is all science. We're here to help you understand things, and this is the beginning. You better get out your pencils. Hang on. Okie dokie. I have two microphones. I made a Y cable so that people couldn't say, oh, he's just fiddling the knobs. No, This is serious stuff. It is the science. It really is. These are PR22 microphones. They're very articulate. I built them at the invitation of Paul Rogers from Bad Company. He wanted a microphone they didn't have to equalize much. Well, if I bring them together, of course, it doubles my power. And if I took them away, you can't, wait a minute. Double my power, that could be 500 watts to 1,000 watts. Yeah, that's right. Because the human cannot detect 3 dB. Only if you were in an echo chamber or doing other things. But that's not why we're here. I have this little plug. The little plug is backwards. I hook pin 2 to 3 and 3 to 2. Why'd you do that? Well, I did it to prove a point. Well, big deal, Heil. They're the same. They sound exactly the same. Well, they should. There's only one problem. One. And it's a big one. This microphone's in phase. So the diaphragm goes down into the voice coil, creates a voltage, and that's how microphones work. This one comes up because it's out of phase. Listen up. Better than that, be sure you watch your screens. Be sure and watch them. When I take these two signals out of phase, they cancel. Are you ready? Oh, they're still there, but they don't work because they're out of phase. They're out of phase. Oh, if we had 2 or 3 more hours, I could live just on that subject. It's one of my favorite subjects, and it affects everything you do in ham radio. What are you talking about? So much happens because of that. Some guy comes piling on your frequency one night, great big carrier. You hit the notch filter button. What happens? He goes away. How's that work? That notch button takes him out of phase, and that guy he's gone. So phasing is so much to do. Let me unplug this. I have some other things later on about it that will really drive some things home. But the situation is that I was able to learn so much from ham radio and change some of the rock industry because we brought things to them that we really needed. Well, I got another phone call long about that time, and that phone call was from Paul Klipsch. Paul was the master of hi-fi. He actually was one of the fathers of the whole hi-fi movement. He was an amazing guy. He built the first folded horn. That folded horn, you only see half of it because what happens to it, it fits in the corner of your room, and it had to have 8 foot one way and 8 the other that completed the 16 foot of the speaker cabinet. So your room was part of the speakers. If you have never experienced a Klipsch horn, please do sometime. You won't believe it. It is amazing. Well, he called me that day and he said, "You the guy that's got that 10,000 watt PA?" And I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "I want to come and see it." So he did. He flew his Bonanza up to Marissa, and I'm going, "Oh, he's going to cut me off at the knee." No, not at all. "Why'd you do this? Well, how come you did that? Well, how come this? How come that? Where'd you learn this? Who taught you this?" And most of those answers were ham radio. So he put me in his plane that night. We go back to Hope, Arkansas, his home. And the next day was unbelievable what he taught me. And he didn't teach me just right at that moment, but he guided me to things. I was taking notes, and I hope you are also on some of this. I was taking notes like crazy because he was telling me about the studies of the telephone system in the early 20s. Bell Labs was formed. They referred to it as the idea factory of the 1920s. Bell Labs was a consolidation of AT&T and Western Electric. Western was the manufacturing arm of the Bell system. But they had 4,000 scientists. Now think about this, guys and girls. They had 4,000 scientists and engineers assigned to the newly created Bell Telephone Labs. And they were fully dedicated to researching how our ears worked and what frequencies were most important to understand that spoken word. What are you talking about, Heil? Well, they had a huge problem. They put the telephone system together. They started out on the East Coast, 2 wires, and all across America, with every 50 miles, happened to be a relay station. And that relay station kept the voltage up, kept the audio frequency up. So it was all linear when they got out to the West Coast. And when they turned the first telephone system on, this is what they heard. It was not what they expected. It was muffled, it was bassy, and they didn't know what to do because all across America, it was all linear. So they put all of these scientists, and yes, there were 4,000 of them. And they had to try to figure out what was wrong. And what they discovered, you would think, oh, well, it's this or that, whatever. It was our ears. It was the way the human being structured sound when it enters your ear. So these guys figured it out. And the 2 lead scientists are 2 guys by the name of Dr. Fletcher and Dr. Munson. And this is what they found. One of the things. You'll notice it certainly isn't flat. Far from it. It looks like a ride at Disneyland. But here's something interesting. If you notice up at the top, about 100, 110 dB, it's almost flat, a lot flatter than anywhere else. That's why kids like to listen to music loud, because they can hear all the cymbals, they can hear all of the mid-range vocals, all the bass. Wow. But here was the most important thing that they finally discovered. We're talking about 2,000 of them now. 4,000, all right. And those 4,000 scientists, along with Fletcher and Munson, discovered this is what had to happen in order for articulation to be golden. They only had from 300 to 3,000. That was it. That was the telephone system. So what are you going to do? You had to equalize it because you could not do anything that was just flat. You heard what flat was. You had to roll off everything under 100, and you wanted to get rid of all the muddiness. And in our business of amateur radio, you waste RF energy. So what are we going to do? What happens now? And I came back home, and I was just on cloud nine because I had learned so much, but I had so much homework in front of me. And I worked on our systems. I got them a lot better because what we did there was equalized them, because we had really proficient equalization stuff from the recording studios. And I was really going strong. We built a lot of mixers and power amps because of the ham radio in me, by our power amplifiers. And our mixers were modular. So if the group had trouble along the way, it was no problem, because when they purchased the amp or the mixer, they got a spare and they could fix it and then send the broken part back to me. It was a revolution. I had 35 people working in the plant. My brother-in-law ran the wood shop. We had a fiberglass shop. We were building stuff, thousands and thousands of speakers, mixers, and everything, with 35 people just cranking. And it was wonderful. We were building huge arena systems. And then we got tapped for festivals. Oh my gosh. And you know, remember, I'm a guy that's never tasted beer or smoked a cigarette. Oh boy, did I see it here. But I was there to provide something very special, and I did. And it really, really made me sad when I saw lots of this. But then I said, you know, there's so many guys trying to get into this. So I wrote the book, and it is the book. It helped people get into the sound reinforcement business, because all of the other books were like the audio encyclopedia. It had 600 pages in it, and it was all technical graphs and all. No, we had to do something simple so that all of us could understand. And that book was really a big help. Started a lot of careers. I did the same thing for ham radio not very many years ago, and it is wonderful. If you've never seen this book, you might want to call DX Engineering and get it, the Heil Ham Radio Handbook, because it's written in language we can all understand. So you want to take a good look at all of that. And so much of this is there because as a ham, I had the knowledge from building. And as you heard earlier, I was a building freak. Well, one thing that happened along the way, Joe, we did the first jobs of the James Gang, as you heard him introduce me, and it was quite hilarious. But he got out of that and started his own solo band called Barnstorm, and he did that about 1972, and he had went to Nashville to record some of the album. And while there, Dottie and Billy West, they're great guitar players, and they were good friends with Joe, had given him this little box with a little 3-inch speaker and a hose and a funnel. It was the beginning of what became the talk box. He recorded Rocky Mountain Way on that particular device, I guess we'd call it. And it really made his career, because the situation with that career was he was all on his own. And so he knew that he had to do something, and the talk box was it. Talk box was many things for a lot of people. One of them, of course, being Joe, and you remember this from Rocky Mountain. Well, along the way, I had done most all of the tours for Humble Pie in America. And they brought over a little 17-year-old kid as a guitarist with them by the name of Peter Frampton. And Peter met up with a little gal here. Again, I told you I was always friends with these guys. I wouldn't work with them unless could be their friend. Well, she got together with Peter. A lot of that happened. They'd come over from overseas and they would get a little gal and marry them because they could get a green card. Well, she was married in my home in Marissa. And a year or so later, she called me one day and says, "Hey, Heil, I need a Christmas present for Peter. Don't send me a guitar. He's got a lot of them." And so you know where I'm going with this. I sent her a talk box. He was the only one that could make it talk. The others, they had other sounds they wanted from it. Richie Sambori from Bon Jovi, all that kind of stuff. But it was starting to slow down for me. All that end of that career, punk rock had come in and so on. Well, I was on KMOX radio for 25 years, CBS, doing High Tech Heil every Wednesday night. We'd talk about all kinds of new gadgets. And CBS would send me to the Consumer Electronics Show and NAB and finding these things, coming back, talk about all that. I also was tapped by the Hubbard family. The Hubbard family bought the first K-band license. And for many years, about 10 as a matter of fact, they'd been experimenting with K-band reception, which meant it was 4 times smaller than the C-band. And so I was on the test team for DirecTV, as it turned out. And I'd been talking a lot about it on my radio shows, but I also did TV on ABC. And we, at the Consumer Electronics Show, we were the ones that announced it's here after all the hoopla for many years. And the vice president of RCA DirecTV came to St. Louis, and we put up the first TV system in a home. That was the first DirecTV. What you see in that picture with the inflatables, which they had sent in because we were the first store to sell them, that's our present plant. That's where Heil Sound is located now. Only there's 7,000 foot buildings behind there. And along with all of this, I did the introduction of Ray Dolby's Pro Logic because I got into home theater big time. We're not talking about little Best Buy things. We're talking about $200,000 and $300,000 rooms, motorized curtains, all that. Got into designing. Had a gal come in to me one day and she says, "Hey, I got this 100-year-old house. Can you help me?" And I said, "What do you got?" "Well, I got that. Can we do anything?" "Oh, absolutely. No, it's not in my vocabulary. That's what we did with it." And it was that. And back behind that curtain drape there, that's what was there. This was another one. What do you do with a bare wall? You do that to it. So we did a lot of design work in those days. But then I said, that's it. I came back to radio. Closed all of my shops and all of the manufacturing that we were doing. Didn't know what I was going to do really, but I came back to ham radio. And that was in 1976. I got an advanced class license. Later on, I went to get an extra, but I could get on the low frequencies. I remember for 17 years, it was 6 meters and 2 meters. That was it. And it was great when the bands were open. But when I got into this, some of the locals in Marissa were CBers. Well, I'd never seen a CB radio, and they start bringing them to me to fix. I'm going, well, this is crazy. I took one of them, and I thought, you know what? If I changed a crystal, I could put that son of a gun on 10 meters. And then I still had my plant, wasn't working, but I had it. We were able to make printed circuit boards. I built the first 10-meter FM rig called the FM10. We did it in kit form because I bought thousands of high gain boards. They went bankrupt, and Andy was going to sell all of it off for junk. I said, no. And I bought the whole truckload. We're talking about a semi truckload. And we made this kit, and you could be on 10-meter FM. And not only that, I wrote the book, 10-meter FM handbook, how to do that. But I only did that a couple years. I said, I got to get back to real radio, which I did. But what happened to my Art Collins audio, you guys? Whoa. I couldn't believe it. Oh, things are all mushy and no transient response, no articulation. What happened? I don't know. I talked to these guys. Well, I got my new Kenwood and I got my new Yaesu. I got the matching microphone. Yeah, right. The only matching about your microphone is it's painted the same color. You understand? This isn't a joke. This isn't something to make you laugh. It's sad. These companies don't build their microphones. They have them OEM'd out, and they really don't understand. They've never been around those 4,000 scientists. And so we have to do something. And I did. I built the very first equalizer for ham radio, the EQ200. It was really cool. Had two filters, one at 160 and one at 2.5K. Why would it be 2.5K? You should have been ahead of me on that one. That's what the scientists told us. 2.5K was the magic. And so away we went. I wrote an article for QST, and I was, I didn't know what was going to happen, but I wrote the article. They accepted it. It was the lead article of July 1982, and it received the cover award. And I got to tell you, very honored, because I wasn't expecting anything about that. But the other thing that happened was in 1999, I get a letter from Dr. Inouye. You know who that is? How about Inouye Communications, ICOM? Had a picture of his station. It had this and their fabulous IC781. Remember that? Great contest rig. It was the only first one that had a CRT screen in it. And he had my gold line and this. I want to ask about my new transmitter. I'm thinking of new line. I think should have this. So from the Pro 1, Pro 2, Pro 3, all the way through to the 7610, the incredible 7300, and this guy. Oh boy, oh boy. If you guys, if you got one of these or have you seen one of these, this is an amazing transceiver. It's the 705. It's a 7300 in a little 3-pound box. It is amazing. Battery operated. Well, we just got to commission on that not long ago, and we're building a headset for it. And it's there and ready to go. And so what happened with ICOM was, it was really a monumental move, but there was a problem. A lot of guys would not pay attention to reading the manual, and they had new buttons, but it's very simple. And so I had to do something about it. We wrote things on our website. There's about 50 pages. If you haven't read it, you should. You should go through it every once in a while because you add a lot of things. And it's very simple. The first thing you do with any transmitter is set the transmit bandwidth. That's the first thing you want to do. Here, we're going to do it for rag chew. You got to tell it what you're doing now. So we want 100 on the low end and 2,900 on the top end. What are you going to do with that equalizer? Well, we're going to roll off some of the bass. You have to roll it off because we don't want a lot of bass, if any at all. Then you want to crank up that 2.5K. You can't change the 2.5. I've already done that for you. But you certainly can bring up some life. And here is a great demo of that. Here it is without any equalization. It's flat. It's the way you sound now if you are not adjusting your equalization. And I know a lot of you aren't because I hear them talk. I don't need no darn EQ. Oh, we all need EQ. Yes, we do. We all need equalization. And so you have to adjust that for what you're going to do with it. In this case, we're doing the rag chew. What about DX or contesting? Or you want to cut through the noise better? Well, this is what we do there. What did I tell you? What's the first thing you do? Bandwidth. 500. I don't want any bass. It does me no good. And 2,500. So here's what's going to happen. I'm going to roll off that low end and I'm going to increase the top end to 2.5. And I'm pretty sure you can hear the difference. The articulation is great. And so for DX, we want even more. So you set the bandwidth 500 to 2,500. You crank up all the treble you got plus 5 and you notch all the bass you can. Because what you want to do is end up with a signal that's on top of the pile. You see, that's what it's all about. Having a demonstration you will never, ever forget. It spells it better than anything I can do for you to really drive it home. Replace air in this balloon with RF. You're rag chewer, and you want to balance things a little bit, so you're all good shape. But I'm a contest guy. I don't want beautiful hi-fi audio. I want to be on top of the pile-up. What did the 4,000 scientists tell you? What did I show you and let you hear? Here it is. The first thing you do to get that is narrow it up and make sure that you have your equalizer at maximum on 2.5. And this is what happens to your signal. When you narrow it up, RF has to go somewhere. You've narrowed it up. Where's it going? The only outlet is what you did for it. You opened the door to 2.5. And time again now, I've let you hear how important 2.5 is. But now if you're going to do rag chew, that's fine. Balance it out. But if I want to cut through the pile up, I want to be top man. And I do that because all of the power I can muster should be focused on those articulate frequencies. And so many times, when I brought the HC4s and 5s in 1980, it was 3. Right after I did the equalizer, I said, you know what? I can do some of that with microphones. I thought people were going to come and burn my plant down. Why did you do that? It sounds terrible. I said, yeah, it's the worst sounding microphone in the world. And you designed it? Yeah, I built it. Why would you do it? Hello. I want everything to be on a 2.5K. The element is just, I don't know how many, but I know it's tens of thousands of those over the years that we have built. But here's one of a great demonstration of that. This is a very nice full range, like you would sound like rag chew stuff. This is my HC7. It's the HC4 in that new package. It'll cut your head off. But guess what? I want it to. So when I'm on the pile up, baby, I'm on top of it because the human ear is looking for that articulate frequency of 2 to 3K. So you equalize the heck out of it. You use the proper microphone element, and away you go. No, it's not pretty. God, it sounds terrible. But it's the way a lot of these guys are getting country number 395. There is no question here. I do this to try to help you because nobody's bringing the science to you, and it really ticks me off. And so we're thrilled that we can do this. The ICOM rigs are all the same. They all have this guy in them, every one of them, with the exception of, was it the 2400 or something? But all of them from the very beginning all the way through the 705. But they have a little different look. Here's a 7610, but it's still the sliders, -2, +3. Look at the bandwidth. We want, for this, we want wide. So you're going to set it at 100 to 2900. And a lot of the others, a 7851, same thing, same equalizer. It's -2 +3. But you play with this. You're the engineer. You're the guys. How do you do that? Don't get on in the morning net and ask Bill, because he's going to say you sound good or you sound bad. He's not going to help you because, no, you are the engineer, darn it. You are the engineer. Listen to yourself in a pair of headphones. I like to do it in another receiver. And then I know exactly what is happening through the chain of transmitter, airwaves, and receiver. Very simple. But most of the monitors in the rigs today, they'll give you a pretty good indication that what's going to happen if you want to balance it or if you want to be really big and on top of the pile up. But I also got word from Dr. Inouye and there are people over here. We needed a microphone for ICOM. Why? Well, ICOM is a very special transmitter. Since the 1960s, they brought over the 701. It didn't even have a microphone preamp in it. They built that in the hand mic. It was really terrible. I had some of those. 720, 730, 740, none of those had any kind of preamp. The later ones, the 730, 40, they had a preamp, but it was down in gain by 15 dB. And when I started working with them, I got them to raise it up a little. So beginning with the 735 and then on down the like, they had a little bit more gain, but you still had to use an active microphone. Active, what do you mean? A passive microphone is a dynamic. It's just a coil of wire and an iron core, and that was it. Active microphone, it actually has an FET transistor inside the microphone. Acts like a little preamp.
And therefore, you have to supply 8 volts down the microphone line to power it before it can receive your audio from your voice. And that's exactly what happens. But a lot of them are very inexpensive little, yeah. And so I worked about a year on this project to get it right. I have never heard a bad report. If there are any, there's something else going on. I hear them day in, day out. I'm on the air here every day. Might not be talking, but I'm listening. I hear so many, just thrilled to death. The ICM. It almost spells ICOM because it won't work on Kenwood. It won't work on Yaesu. It'll work on some aircraft as long as you power it up. But no, use dynamics on some of those. You have to. But the ICOM, this baby comes with its own cable, its own plug. It's amazing. ICM. It also isn't very expensive. But then comes the next one. What do you do about Yaesu? A couple of years after Dr. Inouye started using this in his transceivers, Dr. Hasegawa, who owned Yaesu, came to me at Dayton, and he's a big, tall guy. I want to do it better. I said, oh, okay. We could do that. Okay. I said, but there's going to be a problem. What be the problem? It's going to be education. What do you mean? Well, I said with the little 2-band EQ, you have 2 controls. You just notch or boost. With a parametric, if we do a 3-band, you're going to have, you ready for this? 9 controls. Not 1 or 2, 9. And so for that reason, I hear it almost day in, day out. Oh, I'm in the default mode. I don't want you to be in the default. You have the most incredible tool in ham radio. Use it. No, I don't know how. You read the manual. I told Hasegawa he's going to have a problem. The manuals are terrible. I mean, they're just a bunch of graphs. They don't really tell you. I have a hard time reading it. What's he doing here? If you're not watching and not listening, please give me the next couple of minutes. If I had a 10-year-old child and I brought him here, I could teach that 10-year-old child how to set up perfectly a parametric equalizer because it's really simple when somebody tells you. So here we go. First of all, there are 3 filters. This has 2. This has 3, but that one has the parameters already set. This one, you're the engineer. You have to set all of the parameters. That is why most people have a big problem with Yaesu. Well, check this out because it's really darn simple. Okay, let's take that first filter. You have 3 controls on each one of these. Let's take that first one. The first one, you have to dial in the frequency. Let's dial it in at 200 hertz. The next one is level. We don't want to increase it. We want to notch it. We want to get rid of some of that bass. And the next button is bandwidth. We're talking audio bandwidth, octaves. And I usually set mine at 2 octaves. It's not a big deal either way, but just set it at 2 octaves. So, hey, we already got, we're a third there. 200 minus 3, 2. Frequency, level, width. Okay, let's move to the second filter. There's something about audio in all my life. There's something strange about 800 to 1200. There's a boxy sound in there. Put your hands up to your ears and move. You'll hear what I'm talking about. It's a real weird boxy thing. We can reduce that. Second filter, let's set it at 900 minus 3 or 4, going to notch it, and 2 octaves. Wow, we've done 3/4 of this thing. Okay, I hope you're ahead of me. I've done my job. If you are, you should be. You know where the third one's going. Its frequency is going to be 2.5. It's going to be +8. Yes. Was that hard? Frequency, level, width, frequency, level, width, frequency, level, width. Beautiful. Thank you. Okay. Now, while I'm on this page, I'm sorry this picture didn't come out better, but anyway, down that left side are assignment numbers that mean absolutely nothing. 101, 102, 103, 104, da, 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 da. You know where I need them. But here's the kicker. They're different for each radio. One might be 301, 302. One might be 801, 802. We don't care. All we care about is frequency level width, frequency level width. Bingo. That's how you do it. I forgot something though, huh? What did I forget? Think about it. I want you to think a little bit because I forgot. I didn't forget purposely. We did not adjust the bandwidth, transmit bandwidth. Yeah, we did the audio bandwidth here. I'm talking about the honest to goodness transmitter bandwidth. You know what I'm talking about. Remember this? You want to be wide or you want to be the contester? Now, there's one other, and this has got to shout loud. There is a control on all Yesus that save all of what we just did. If you do not save it, forget it. So you got to look up in your manual because those are all different, but it's easy to find that one. You have to save it. And when you do, man, you're there. And on our website, we have things for the MP series and some of the others, the 450 and so on. You want to read that. But it's all there. As I say, there's more than 50 pages on all this stuff. It's called All Things ICOM, All Things Yesu, All Things Kenwood, All Things Elecraft. And they're all there so that we can understand what's going on. But as I told you, it's very simple. But the other thing I want to talk to you about as we kind of round the corner here is how to use a microphone. What do you mean, Heil? You talk in it, yeah. But I hear a lot of people that don't address a microphone properly, just as what you're seeing here. They get about 3 feet from the microphone. And, oh, my goodness. Well, that's okay, Heil. You just crank it up. Okay, I will. But when I did, it sounds like I'm in a roller rink. No, I lost so much. I lost the transient response. I lost it. I lost all my dynamic range. So why do you do that? The scientists tell us you will never be more than 2 inches from a microphone. Never. And one of the things that happened when Sarah and I moved to California, we had a second home there to help Joe some times. And around 2006, he sat me down in his kitchen. He said, "You got to build me a better microphone." I said, "Well, what's wrong with that ball thing you're using?" "Gosh," he said, "I got to be right here and I can't move. I want one that I can move around." So we started building the PR20 for him, and it became one of the microphones for entertainers because it's Omni on the front. They don't have to be glued right here. But then he said, "Heil, how about getting rid of all those guys behind us? Can you do something with that?" Of course I can. Going to change microphones. Just unplug the cable. This is the great PR40. Oh, I got to watch it. This thing has a little bit more gain than the other one. It's a large dynamic. No one has ever done a large dynamic. Several have tried. Some of the big boys have tried. But they come to me at the shows. They're engineers. How'd you do that, Heil? I did it because of ham radio. They don't believe me, but it's true. The secret is that large dynamic. It's an inch and a quarter, inch and 3/8 right in there. All the other ones, sure, all electroids, they're little 3/4 inch things. And they all have 4 holes, 3 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 12 o'clock. That's the entrance from the outside stuff. And so it goes in out of phase. Well, that's not enough. So, Joe put me to the task. Do it, Heil. Figure it out. And I did. Here's what I did. First of all, I'll let you experience what I'm about to do. When I talk in the back of this microphone, it's going to be 40 dB down. Here it goes. It's down 40 dB. Oh, it still works, but it's down 40. No other dynamic microphone at any cost will do this. Thank you, Joe. Here's how I did it. It's all about phasing, playing with those crazy antennas, knowing what phasing can do for us. You saw a while ago what happens. Well, what I did is I took that large diaphragm. I didn't put holes around the side. I opened the whole bottom of it. I set it on we'll call it a signal collection tube. It's just a resting place for it. Through the side panels comes the lows, the mids, the highs, and they all come screaming up into the bottom. I have the whole bottom of that element open. Well, when you come into the bottom of the element, they're out of phase. Hello. And I can tell you, so many broadcasters have figured it out. Sirius Radio just bought 250 of them. Recording studios all around the country and the world, actually. They're all discovering the PR40. And again, it's a miracle microphone. It really is. And for ham radio, I never intended for it to be sold in this market because it has way too many lows. There is no other dynamic that'll get down to 28 hertz. None. And guess where I have a little rise? 2.5K. I don't have any EQ in this thing. It's wonderful. That's why they love it. And when guys started buying it for ham radio, I'm going, oh man, thank you very much. However, I took this design, I rolled off the bottom end under 100 hertz. It doesn't go down to 28. We don't need it on ham radio. And what happened there? The great PR 781. And that microphone has become the darling of the podcast industry and just tons of ham radio. You have a Yaesu, you have a Flex, you have any kind of radio that uses a dynamic, this is your answer. It's really cool. You can use the PR40, but you have to tame it. That's the whole deal. That's the whole deal. My wife, Sarah, she wanted me some, it's been about maybe 3 years ago back. She said, you need to build a microphone that's high quality. However, it shouldn't cost very much. Well, I don't want it cheap. Well, it so happened, again, that timing thing hit me. I had been working with Fox News in Chicago building a interview microphone. And I had this really great element that we came up with. And we built thousands of them. It's an open frame, unlike any other. And the contract was over with them. But I had a whole bunch of it, all the tooling thing. That's what cost in anything we build today is the tooling. And so I came up with this. I'm going to unplug this. This is the great HM10. We're talking about a microphone that, like the old drunk said, I spill more than that. It's not expensive, but man, does this thing sound good. So you see, we have all the bases covered, and it's all because of ham radio. I was able to learn how to do these things. And of course, the darling for me, I really like this guy right here. It's being sold to many, many radio stations, especially a lot of the guys doing classic rock and so on, because this is an exact copy of the RCA 77 that used to sit on Larry King's desk, sit on Letterman's desk. There's an interesting story about that. If you recall, Letterman used to have an RCA on it. I hope you realize that a lot of those don't work. They're just props. But the RCA was working. And one day, Michael, the sound engineer, came in and it was gone. Somebody stole it. Now what are we going to do? We have 2 hours to showtime. So he ran home and got his PR40 and put it on the desk. And if any of you are Letterman fans, you know what I'm talking about. For the last years that Letterman was on, I had a Heil PR40 on the desk. But it just, all these crazy things happen, and they just happen because in the right place at the right time. And the thing with this Sirius thing, I'm so blessed by all of that, because the reason they wanted them, because these studios are small and they have glass in front of them, and it reflects the host voice and comes back out of phase. So it gets really crazy. And we did all kinds of other things. I have one little thing I'm going to take about 3 more minutes and tell you about. We've gone through all these things. There's so much more. But to nail the phasing, this is it. How did Yagi design the Yagi antenna? He didn't have computers. So he made an element so long, driven element, got it to resonate. Then he made one a little smaller, and by moving it around, he could get gain. But then he made one longer behind, and he could get rejection. Wow. That's how the Yagi worked. Well, I always had heard about phased arrays. I didn't think I could afford one because I didn't know much about it. And we had a home down in the Ozarks. Started in 2008. And so what I did is I built a phased array, and so can you. There was nothing to it. Check this out.
We have just completed the installation of a 75-meter phased array antenna system, consisting of a pair of coaxial dipoles mounted atop a pair of 55-foot telephone poles. We put them in an inverted V fashion, and the poles are 64 foot apart. These are 500 foot from the operating position, fed with RG213. In order to make the antennas directly from east to west, we use a delay line, a 43 foot here on 75 meters that's switched in and out of the driven element, either east or west. The downlead length is 126 foot. We take all of that coax, the downlead length, the 43 foot phasing delay line, and mounted them in a container, one of the plastic container boxes that we actually buried, and just the top of it shows. It's all sealed, so it's waterproof. But that's the way we get to switch all the components from 500 foot using one of the Amatron RCS 8V remote switches. It really works well. take a listen to how we can get at least 10 to 20 dB difference east to west.
Like a lot of people do. Mine's usually 3 inches or so. That's just after you done mow it. And I know, probably, we get a dry day. I'm going to have to lay out there and mow. That's just all there is to it because, if you leave it that high, when it starts growing in it all, it's looking ragged pretty quick. So it's to that point now, and
the system really performs on weak signals. Take a listen as we switch to the direction they're coming from. Also note the preamplifier makes no difference on 75 meters on this signal. The preamp will, of course, make the meter read higher, but in many cases, the preamplifier does not cause the weak signal to be more readable. Check it out.
Yeah, well, I see they introduced big display on it, and I don't know if that is their form of portable, or what that is.
I think you can tell from that what an incredible thing that was, and it cost very little. I was lucky being down in the Springfield area, Missouri area. I went to the electric co-op and they gave me the telephone poles. They had some they had cut off and so on. So we cut them off to what we needed, and bingo, we were there. I had a farmer that had a drill and we did it. But it was a very, very cool thing. I enjoyed it very much. But one last thing, and we're going to head out of here. We're going to talk about your receiver. I have always, even when I'm working with these manufacturers, I've asked them to listen to me. Our receiver, fine. No, they're talking sensitivity, selectivity. Okay, I get it. All of them are great. But every single solitary one of them has terrible audio. Even the $15,000 ones, they have 1 or 2 watts at 10% distortion. It's ridiculous. So I'm going to do something about that. And I did. And what I did is I built a parametric equalizer. You'll notice here I set the outsides at 160 on the bottom, 6K on the top. Now you can increase or decrease that. But look at that mid. You can move it around from 400 to 4K. The parametric receive audio system. I am very pleased with the results of this. We are selling a lot of them, and I know from all of the emails and the phone calls that we're helping a lot of people that are hard of hearing. They have some kind of problems with their hearing, and this is it, especially if they have a hearing imbalance. I have a recording that I did. One of the neat things about it is I built a line out amplifier, this guy. So what I do there is I come out of there straight into my Audacity or whatever on the computer. You don't need a bunch of Y chords. There are 2 individual low distortion headphone amplifiers, one for the logger, one for the operator. However, that's not the biggie. The biggie is hearing imbalance. And I can't tell you how many people come to me because if they have hearing aids or have that, there's the situation. Let's bring up some things and let's see what we got going here. There's the way you hear him. That's the way you hear him. I'm only adjusting.
Echo India 8 Bravo, Lima Bravo, BI-ATLB calling about.
Just
here are a couple of
2.5.
usual single sideband signals that are mushy and bassy, difficult to understand. You can add some speech articulation just by adding some 2.5 mid-range.
The 2 meter, sideband.
It's the way you hear him.
It's not the same as a rig built, just for 2 meter sideband.
There it is.
The receivers will never compare. So it's kind of nice that, again, ICOM technology. They were nice enough.
The whole thing about it is that I did all of the things that those 4,000 scientists told us to do. And none of these manufacturers are doing it for us. Well, we did, and it doesn't cost very much. That's the good point. And I'm extremely happy with the speaker. The speaker is Paul Klipp's written all over it. He taught me in the early days how to take a speaker outside in free air and do a cone resonance. And then you treat the cabinet, or in big cabinets, we could build filters in them, but you treat the cavity to that frequency. So there's no phase distortion and it really works great. It's balance line in, so important that things should be balanced. And it's 25 watts at 0.1. That's hi-fi specs, but that's what I wanted. You're not going to use it. No, it's not going to be hi-fi specs. Well, yes, it is, because it's going to get rid of all that stupid distortion, and the listener fatigue goes way down. The last thing I want to point you to is our connectors. I'm telling you, I got so ticked off in my years about the Foster connector. Go home and look at I don't care whose it is. They're all very, very poor connectors. They come from Foster, the people that invented it for the CB band back in the 60s. This is a very wide band. You don't need needle nose to screw it into your front panel. And if it's recessed, forget it. But the cable clamp, nobody's cable clamp works, because the connector was made, and then they just stick some kind of wire in it, and they'll add black tape, or they'll put heat shrink around it. I built my own cable. The other cable coming out of that is for the push to talk. The cable is magnificent. I can't tell you how many tens of thousands of feet of this we sell to broadcasters and industry people, because it's not 26 gauge. Every darn microphone ham radio sees is 26 gauge. It's garbage, but we are forced to use it until now. That's 18 gauge wire, and it's balanced. The shield is 100% silver. So when you go to spread it apart, you don't end up with two little slivers. And here's the big part. The red and the blue are 18 gauge, and they're push to talk. They're carrying DC. And so every other microphone have that all in one shield. I have fixed so many RFI problems just by changing the cable, because that RF is caused with that DC and that sensitive AC all in the same shell. So it just makes perfect sense. But I really appreciate your time. I know some of them we go long, but there's so much to talk about. And what we're doing now, after all that I've done, we come back and do just focus on one subject, because I can be an hour or more on just one subject. There's so much that we can learn, and I'm here to help you in any way. I get so many phone calls and emails, and I'm always there for you. Always. I will answer them. Many times, if it gets a little complicated, we'll get on Skype, whatever we have to do to help you. And I think you can find all those answers from Tim too, because we do back up everybody. We want to make you enjoy all the products. That's for sure. One last thing that was very honorable: we're the only manufacturer in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And when they came to me to do this, I said, well, we're not a very big company. Why me? And he said, well, you brought things to this industry that no one else has ever done. And I never thought about it. There I am standing beside the only quadraphonic mixer, the modular power amps, all that. The other side of that, that's the back side of it. Mixers I built for studios, and the number one talk box. All of this stuff happens, and I don't know how come me, but I guess it's going to happen. whether I like it or not, but I was very honored by that one. And the last one is I was just awarded an honorary PhD degree from Mizzou. And it's, how do you do that? Here's a guy that barely made it through high school, barely. I was too busy playing the organ professionally. So, and in every one of these cases, the speech I made for the degree, the signage on the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame wall, everything on there I mentioned, I learned it all from ham radio. So I guess you can say ham radio's in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I thank you so much, Tim. I appreciate you asking me. I hope we come back and play some more because this is a great club and I'm really honored to be here for you.
Thank you so much, Bob. I've got a tear in my eye. It's an incredible hour and a half, and I thank you so much for your time, your dedication, and everything you do to give back to our wonderful hobby. And Bob, if you have just a few minutes, I'd like to let the people here that have attended ask questions. So if you have questions for Bob Heil, now's your chance. You got the guy. So ask away.
This is NAMP, Ted. I'm just wondering if I'm supposed to replace my PR40 with a PR781, and also
not at all.
Go ahead.
What kind of transmitter do you use?
The Flex 600.
Oh yeah. See, you have beautiful equalization. You just have to balance it. That's all. The PR40 is great, but you have to tame it, and you got the proper thing to do that with. No problem. Yeah, good combo.
Okay, I have one other little question too. I've got a parametric audio system also, and I'm getting some feedback, RF feedback in it. You think I need to put some something on the input to that?
I ask you one question. Have you grounded the chassis, both of them, to your station ground in the transceiver?
I think I did, but I'll check.
I fixed a guy today. He was so thrilled. He called me and he called the plant and they switched me over to him. And he says, I love this thing, but I can't use it on 20 meters. Well, that also tells me you got some other problems if you only have it on one band, but that's another day, another subject. And I said, take the ground lugs. There's one on the speaker. There's one on the PRAS, your station ground and the transceiver. Ground those together. He called me back within the hour, just screaming like, whoa, it fixed it. So you might want to check those grounds. And if not, you get back to me.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ted. And I love my PR40. I'm on 40 meters every night with that PR40, Bob. Yeah. And boy, I get more compliments with that. Yeah. W3YJ, you put some stuff in the chat, but why don't you go ahead and, Harry, ask your questions.
Okay. Hey, I got an IC705. Love it. I'm hoping for good weather so I can start going outside again. You mentioned you were developing a headset for the 705. When do you think it might be available?
It's here. Yeah. We built this for the handy talkie.
Oh, okay. So that's the one I see. That's the one I see on the DXE site for handy talkies.
Yep. It's HTH, handy talkie Heil, I call it, -I. And it's the same pinouts and it works great. Got to push the talk in line, away you go.
That's great. Thank you. I will probably get one of those once the snow goes away.
All right.
Next question. A lot of these newer radios are using Bluetooth, and Bluetooth has the advantage that you don't get all tangled up with wires and cables. Would you consider making any headsets that use Bluetooth, specifically, once again, for the 705, which does have Bluetooth?
Well, okay, thank you.
Next question. A lot of these newer radios are using Bluetooth, and Bluetooth has the advantage that you don't get all tangled up with wires and cables. Would you consider making any headsets that use Bluetooth, specifically, once again, for the 705, which does have Bluetooth?
Not at this time. I'm not a fan of Bluetooth because it's all bubbly. It's not real good analog. And you're looking at an analog guy in a digital world.
Okay,
But
you know this better than I do, but I use Bluetooth all the time with headsets, with my iPhone and my Apple devices, and it works pretty well.
pretty well.
What? Yeah, yeah. I listen to music on my iPhone all the time, and it sounds great.
Well, there again, it's not analog and it always had that bubbly sound to me. But we're working on some things. There's some new platforms of Bluetooth, and we're going to see if maybe we can stretch that a little. So stay tuned. I'm constantly doing things. So we'll see if we can come up with something.
Okay, and last thing, I'm a huge fan of the Who. I appreciated the Who stories.
Oh, were you at any of the concerts?
Only recently, I saw them on the recent tour where they toured with a huge orchestra.
Yeah, that was good. That was good.
Yeah, and Pete and Roger can still bring it. I'm disappointed they're not touring anymore, but hopefully that'll start up again once we all get vaccinated.
Yeah, well, you missed the crazy days of Keith Moon.
I know, and the sad thing was I was a student in Pittsburgh in the late 70s, and I can kick myself for not availing myself to all the wonderful rock groups that came through Pittsburgh in the late 70s. I deeply regret that.
Oh, that's great.
Okay,
thank you.
That's enough for me.
Thank you, Harry. And Amy, N8AMY, you had a question for Bob.
Hi, Bob. I just wanted to ask, how did purple become the Heil signature color?
I can't tell you that.
Okay.
Let me tell you why. It's been, from about 1969 or 70. It just happened. And there's a reason, and I'm always waiting for somebody to come up and do it. But nobody knows. It's pretty simple, and so I hate to tell you that that's the answer, but I'm waiting to see if anybody really knows it. Even people who work for me, but they don't seem to get it. It's pretty simple, but it is a pretty color, isn't it? And it had nothing to do with Jimi Hendrix.
Good stuff. Other questions for Bob Heil? Well, Bob, I know you're not as young as you seem to be here, and we're so thankful for all the years and the memories and the history that you gave us tonight was absolutely spectacular. And we hope you keep going strong. You still got your foot on the gas.
Oh, yeah.
And so we'll look forward to you coming back to the MCARC for another presentation in the near future.
Well, we do hope so. And if any of you guys know about this part of my life, that's about 10 feet in front of me in this new studio I built. I do a show on WTWW every Saturday night at 7 o'clock, 5.085 theater organ. And I'm still playing. We're doing some virtual concerts, got a lot of stuff on YouTube, but I love playing, and it's really part of my schooling and learning to listen. Listening is an art, and I'm very blessed by that. So we're
okay, Bob, last chance. Anybody has a question for Bob Heil before we let him go? All right, Bob, thanks very much for coming tonight, and give our best to Sarah, and we'll see you soon at the next big ham fest that we're allowed to go to, and it'll be fun. And good luck to you and everybody at Heil Sound.
Thank you so much, Tim. I appreciate your support and everybody there. We'll talk to you somewhere along the line and go from there. 7-3, everybody.
All right, 73, Bob. And as we do on Thursday nights and we do on meeting nights, the Zoom stays on until nobody's left. So you can stay on and talk, chat, have a grand old time. And I see, it looks like Alex has already bailed. So I don't know Who's left?
Hey Tim, I got one for you.
Yeah.
If you're gonna leave Zoom on, I'm gonna go over there and play about 2 or 3 minutes of the theater organ, and you dial me out when you get tired. How's that? Okay.
That sounds good.
Okay. All right. 7-3, everybody. Really
73,
nice.
Bob.
Yeah. That's all. You're in the control. You can dial it out, whatever.
All right. Look at this. We're gonna get a live performance. You talk about a special night. I mean, this is off the charts.
Yeah, this was really great.
Hopefully you got to learn some stuff there, Bob.
Yeah, I did. I actually got my EQ was default, so I actually set it up while he was going over it.
Yeah, I will absolutely get my 7300 and 705 set up better. I don't operate a lot of sideband, but if I'm going to, I might as well do it right.
When's the recording going to be available? Just asking.
Probably tomorrow.
Okay, cool.
Oh, geez, we don't have the audio. Oh. Dr. Bob, we don't have any audio. Dr. Bob, turn on the audio. Oh. Oh. This is painful, knowing that he's playing and we can't hear it.
Yeah.
Especially when he's the audio man.
Yeah, not good. And he can't hear us. Well, I'm going to have to disconnect him, I think, unfortunately. Jeez. It looks like it sounds good. But,
it does, doesn't it?
but we got nothing.
Excellent night there, Tim.
But
Thank you, Eddie.
We could just watch him play that. You know, we can't hear him, but he's very talented at making his hands go. I mean, he's working for us.
Yeah, he is clearly very knowledgeable and knows what he is doing.
Bob, we need the audio from the organ. I just sent him a text, so maybe he's still adjusting. Oh, it could happen. Maybe it's something evil about Skype. But he clearly doesn't have his phone right there. He's in his happy place, but unfortunately, no audio.
Well, he's not muted, so microphone's working good at not picking up the sound around them.
Yeah, you would think we would hear something, but
yeah,
I wish I could go over there and flip a switch.
We need something better than 2.5.
Oh,
I was paying attention.
good, Janie. I hope maybe you learned something tonight.
Yeah, I learned all about 2.5. I don't know what I'm going to do with it, but I learned about 2.5.
Good.
Tim, on your controls, can you unmute everybody?
I can.
I wonder if that would unmute him too.
He is unmuted.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, he's unmuted. I checked that. Dr. Bob, calling Dr. Bob. Come in, Dr. Bob. Oh,
there you go.
Oh, Dr. Bob, Bob, we don't hear the organ. Over. Bob? Bob, we don't hear the organ.
Okay, everybody holler, Bob, Bob.
There he is.
Hey, oh, Bob? Back.
Oh, that's all there. What happened?
Hey, Bob, we didn't hear the organ at all. It looked great, but we couldn't hear a darn thing.
Well, that's crazy. I do this. That's how, in fact, I did some recording this afternoon. I wonder what's going on.
Can you give us another shot?
I can do that.
All right.
Check
this.
Good. I'm glad we hung in there. It's kind of like The Long Run by the Eagles.
We need one of his fancy microphones. That's what we need.
Okay, let me try.
In the long run.
You can hear me, right?
Oh yeah, we hear you fine. We want to hear your organ.
Yeah, hang on. Let me ask you this. Can you hear that?
Yeah, there we go. We don't see you now, but that's okay.
Is Corey recording this?
Yes.
You heard that?
Yeah, it sounded great, Bob.
I got to go check and see what's going on here. But anyway, hey, thanks a lot, everybody. This was really fun.
I don't know about one of your microphones, but I sure do like to have a recording of all that music. I don't want a microphone. I just want a tape of all that music.
Well, there's a lot of it on YouTube.
Well, I'm going to have to look it up.
Just go to YouTube and put my name on it. You'll find them.
Okay, I'll put your name on it.
Thanks, everybody.
Okay. Good night, Bob.
Yeah.
Night, Bob.
Good night.
Good night, Bob.
Good night.
Excellent. Good night, all.
Good night, Eddie.
Wonderful, wonderful.
Yeah, I'm going to be getting out of here too. Hey, Tim, that he is quite a speaker. 73s, everybody. We'll see you.
All right. Well, we'll try to top it next month.
I might start operating sideband again. See ya.
Bye.
73s.
Night, Eric.
Good night.
So what did everybody do today? Did you go out and build a snowman in that beautiful snow that's nice and packing? You know, the snow, you can pack it real nice. Did you build a snowman today?
It was 50 degrees today.
Yeah, it was 55 degrees and sunny.
And it was all melting.
Yeah, but we still have like a foot of snow here.
It snowed?
Yeah, up here where there's still a foot of snow on the ground, and I went out and filled bird feeders. And while I was out there, all the snow, whenever you kick it, it would roll up in a ball. So I was going to build a snowman. I built a little one.
Al, I think you're right. I don't know that we can ever top this.
No.
Even Steelman was rocking to the music there.
I like that kind of stuff. You know, it's classy. It's good.
It's good for your
on
soul.
YouTube, he has a lot of good videos of him playing. Yeah.
They used to have that kind of music up at what was used to be the New Villa restaurant up there where the Moose is now, up there in Farrell. They used to have an organ in there and a piano, and they used to have dances, classical dancing, like real waltzes and that kind of music, like Bing Crosby music back in the day. Do you remember any of that, Tim?
No, I don't. It may have been a little bit before my time.
No, not that much before your time. Well, Dee, I must be really older than you are because it was about that time when I was growing up, although my mom and dad drugged me to all those places. So I always had firsthand. I mean, I was bottle weaned on a bar. They had a lot of friends. The guy's name was Rocky that used to own that bar.
I remember the name New Villa, but I don't know that I was ever in there.
It was a very high class restaurant. It had an upstairs and a downstairs. It was very high class restaurant. And then on weekends, they'd have this beautiful music. These women would, that was when you dressed up real fancy, and men would actually wear suits. And you didn't see anybody in jeans. Men would go out on weekends in suits, and ladies would be dressed up, and they would do cha-chas and waltzes and all those kind of dances. It was
very
nice.
cool.
Hey, is Bob still connected or is he gone?
I don't know. You know, he's. I don't want to, you know, lock him out because I think that lock might carry over into the future, Josh. I'm worried about that. So
okay.
I don't know what, you know, he did not shut down.
If you want a good chuckle, I'm going to copy this link and send it to the group in the chat. The MSRP on this microphone that he has listed is astronomically priced.
On the PR40?
Uh-huh. Unless it's just the MSRP that's coming up on my screen, but.
Did you check a DX?
No, I haven't checked at DX. I was playing around on his site. No, it's more of a joke. I think it's a really big typo. 329, 329, 329, 329, 329, 329, 304.
Oh, geez.
That's why I said it's just worth a good chuckle. But hey, is anybody going to go up to the tower site, or is the tower site even accessible?
It is accessible, and if you need us to go up there, we can.
Okay. Yeah, I haven't. The Pi went down about a week and a half ago, and I just haven't had a chance to jump on the Thursday night call, so I can let you guys know. But I think it just needs rebooted like it did last time.
Yeah. You know, when we're at breakfast, we can get a group to go up there.
Okay.
Yeah, it is 329, but it stops there.
Is it?
Yeah.
Yeah, there it is.
I love the way this microphone sounds. It is so good. I get so many compliments.
Hey, Josh, is there a way we could enable the watchdog on that Pi so it reboots itself?
Probably, but I'm not sure.
Okay.
I haven't looked into that.
We might have to run it through one of the I2C connections. I think there's a watchdog circuit on the pod. It's tied into the power pin.
Yes.
You could hit the
there it
reset.
is.
You could hit the reset line.
I'll send him an email, Josh. What a find.
I mean, I think that's more than Scrooge McDuck's actual net value is, if you want to tell him that.
You only need to sell one.
Right?
Oh, man, I hate when that happens.
No returns.
That's right, Marty. You only got to sell one.
We're out of business. Sorry.
Hey, Marty, that fence filter he was talking about must be one heck of a filter if you put it on the fence side. I mean, those weed choppers are up about 60 to 70,000 volts.
Mine's about 7,000. I don't have one that does weeds. Mine's about 7,000 volts.
Well, the weed cutter that we had you could draw an arc off of it about 2 inches, and it was bright blue. The one Hereford bull we had, he'd stand in the mud, and he'd just bring his nose up across it, about 1.5 inches, 2 inches away. Never phased that boy.
Well, they can, they go up and they sniff it, and they